When my grandparents left me a large inheritance, I thought it would change my future. Instead, my brother secretly stole it, bought himself a house, and my parents told me I should just move on. My brother stole my inheritance and bought a house with it, and my parents told me to let it go. I never thought my family would betray me in such a deliberate, calculated way, but looking back now, I can see the red flags scattered across years of subtle favoritism, and spoken hierarchies, and unaddressed resentments that quietly poison everything between us. My name is Daniel, I'm 32 years old, and for the longest time, I believed family was unshakable, that no matter what, blood meant something. I was wrong. My grandparents were the one source of stability in my life. They lived just a few blocks away from the house I grew up in, and I spent countless afternoons there after school. They cooked for me, listened to me, helped me with homework, and reminded me, gently but persistently, that I mattered. My parents were loving in their own way, I suppose, but their energy was always consumed by my older brother, Ethan. From the time we were kids, Ethan was the golden child captain of the soccer team, straight A student, the kid everyone in the neighborhood bragged about. My grandparents loved him too, but with them I never felt overshadowed. They had this way of making me feel like I wasn't competing for space. When my grandfather passed away suddenly from a heart attack when I was 19, I was devastated. It was my first real taste of loss, and I clung to my grandmother for comfort. She passed 8 years later, after a slow decline that left her bedridden in her final months. Losing them both felt like the ground beneath me had been pulled away. But they left behind something for me, something I didn't know about until years later. My grandmother had always been practical. She'd lived through lean times, and she saved every penny she could. And beknownst to me, she and my grandfather had put aside a significant sum of money specifically for me, not for Ethan, not for both of us, but for me. The reasoning, as I would later learn, was painfully simple. They believed my parents' favoritism meant Ethan would always be looked after, but that I needed a safety net. Something that was mine alone. That money was supposed to help me build a future, to go back to school, to start a business, or just to have a down payment on a home. I didn't even know it existed until after I turned 28. That was when the betrayal began. At 28, I was living in a small apartment, working a decent but unfulfilling job in IT support. I wasn't rich, but I was getting by. Ethan, on the other hand, had been struggling despite his so-called golden boy status. He had bounced between jobs, burned through credit, and made a series of bad financial decisions that left him drowning in debt. But, as always, my parents found ways to cushion his falls. So when I got a call from a lawyer representing my grandparents' estate, I was shocked. The lawyer explained that there had been an account set aside for me, carefully kept under my name, totaling nearly $220,000. It wasn't life-changing in the way lottery winnings might be, but it was enough to completely alter the trajectory of my life. I could have finally bought a house, paid off my student loans, and stopped living paycheck to paycheck. I remember sitting in my apartment, staring at the paperwork the lawyer had sent me, my hands shaking as I realized my grandparents had thought of me, that they had seen me all along. I felt loved in a way I hadn't in years, but before I could even process what to do with the money, it was gone. I went to the bank a week later to verify the account, and the manager looked at me like I was crazy. The funds had already been withdrawn, not just a small portion, but all of it, every last cent. The withdrawal had taken place 2 weeks earlier, with signatures that looked like mine but weren't. I panicked. I called the lawyer, demanded answers, and he sounded just as confused as I was. He confirmed that the account had indeed been in my name, with me listed as the sole beneficiary. There should have been no way for anyone else to access it, unless, of course, someone had convinced the bank otherwise. I dug deeper, called the bank's fraud department, filed complaints, demanded investigations. That's when the pieces started to fall into place. The person who had accessed the account had used identification fake, but frighteningly close to real, and the address listed for contact matched Ethan's. My stomach dropped when I saw it. I didn't want to believe it, but the evidence was right there. My brother had stolen the money. I drove to my parents' house the next day, my heart pounding so hard I could barely think straight. Ethan's car was in the driveway. He had just bought it, a brand new SUV, shiny and expensive, completely out of line with the fact that he was supposedly drowning in debt. When I walked in, I didn't even try to hide my anger. I confronted him in front of my parents, laid everything on the table: the money, the account, the proof. Ethan didn't even bother denying it. He smirked, like it was some kind of joke. "You don't need that money, Daniel," he said. "I needed it more than you. Besides, Mom and Dad agree with me. It's not like you were doing anything with your life." My mom tried to calm me down, placing her hand on my shoulder like I was the one being unreasonable. "Daniel, listen," she said softly. "Ethan has a family. He's got responsibilities. You're single. You're doing fine on your own. He needed the money more. It's just money. You need to let it go. Let it go. That phrase echoed in my head like a gunshot. They had sided with him. They had known. My father, stoic as always, simply nodded in agreement. As though it were the most logical thing in the world. Your brother's building a life, he said. That money is better used helping him get back on track. You're strong enough to make it without handouts. My voice broke when I shouted at them, when I demanded to know how they could justify this. That money was mine. It was meant for me. Specifically for me. My grandparents who had seen exactly how this family dynamic would play out, but my parents didn't care. Ethan had already bought a house with the money, a beautiful 3-bedroom place in the suburbs, with a fenced yard and a garage. I drove past it one night just to see. And there it was, my inheritance turned into his white picket fence. Dream, while I was still in my 1-bedroom apartment, counting pennies and staring at the cracked paint on the ceiling. I thought about suing him. I thought about pressing charges, but when I talked to a lawyer, I was told the case would be difficult, messy, and could drag on for years. The documents Ethan used were fake, but the bank had already released the funds. The only way forward would be to sue my own brother, to drag my entire family through a legal war that would destroy what little relationship we had left. And the worst part, I wasn't even sure my parents would testify on my behalf. In fact, I was certain they wouldn't. So I did nothing. I swallowed the rage, the betrayal, the deep, gut-wrenching sense of worthlessness. I went home, shut my door, and screamed into a pillow until my throat was raw. Weeks passed, then months. My parents continued to act like nothing had happened, inviting me over for dinners where Ethan and his wife would brag about their new house, their new furniture, their new life. Every time I felt like I was being stabbed. My parents never once acknowledged my pain. They never once apologized. To them, I was being dramatic, selfish, petty. After all, it was just money. But to me, it wasn't just money. It was validation. It was proof that I mattered to my grandparents. It was the life I could have built, the dreams I could have chased. And Ethan stole it all. The turning point came last Thanksgiving. I was at my parents' house, sitting at the table, pretending to be part of a family that had already chosen who mattered and who didn't. Ethan was across from me, carving turkey like he was the king of the world. At some point, his son, my nephew, ran up to him, asking if they could go play in the backyard when dinner was done. Ethan laughed and said, "Of course, buddy. That's why we got the house, so you'd have space to run around." And my parents smiled, proud, beaming, like their boy had done something heroic. That's when it hit me. They didn't care about right or wrong. They never did. They cared about Ethan, always Ethan. And in that moment, I realized I was free. Free from seeking their approval. Free from trying to belong in a family that never wanted me. Free from carrying the weight of their betrayal. I got up from the table, walked out of the house, and never looked back. That night, I started making plans. I found a new job in another city, packed my things, and moved within a month. I cut off contact with my parents and my brother entirely. No calls, no visits, no updates. I blocked their numbers, deleted their emails, and told myself I would never again beg for love from people who had proven, time and time again, that I wasn't worth it to them. It's been almost 2 years now. At first, the silence was unbearable. I cried more than I'd like to admit, but over time, it became liberating. I built a new life, made new friends, started saving again. I may not have my grandparents' money, but I have something better, peace. And in the end, maybe that's the real inheritance they wanted for me. To know when to walk away. To know when to stop letting people use you as a doormat. To know your own worth. Ethan can keep the house. He can keep my parents. But he can't take my future anymore. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more content like this.